All right. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Rasheedah Sadiq.
All right, thank you so much, our super mentor, Ms. Fatima. That was a really generous introduction, and I'm always happy to be with Black Belts because I know that we are leaders in the field of teaching and learning. So today we're going to be looking at the role of classroom research in enhancing teaching and learning. And I know that a lot of us, when we hear research, we're like, no, that's for masters and PhD students. Oh, I escaped it after my first degree. Why is she bringing it back? But I want to first of all let you know that classroom research is different from academic research. It's something that anybody can do. And hopefully you'll see that even in our everyday lives, we do participate or we do research regularly. So hopefully by the end of the session, we'll gain a better understanding of what exploratory action research is. We will also get exposed to how to conduct exploratory action research, and we will be able to appreciate the benefits of EAR to teachers and students, exactly how it helps to enhance teaching and learning. And I'm hoping that some of us will be encouraged to start our own research in our own classes. All right, so this is a lot of text. I will try to read and I want you to follow because it's actually a task for us to do. So first of all, what exactly is research? So research doesn't have to be so academic. Research is any organized, systematic search for answers to the questions that we ask. So the first two scenarios are scenarios in our everyday lives. And I'm going to read them and I want you to tell me if it's research or not. And the second two are scenarios in the classroom, and I'll read them and also want you to tell me if they are research or not. So you can feel free to read ahead, and when you are ready, you can just put 1, yes, if you think it's research, or no, if you think it's not, 2, yes and no, 3, yes and no, 4, yes and no. So the first one, Louis needs to buy a flight ticket to go from Kenya to London on the fastest and cheapest route. In order to find what he's looking for, he searches in a number of airlines websites online and also in other websites to choose the most appropriate flight for him. He makes notes about a number of choices, which he later compares before buying the tickets. Okay, so that's the first one. So if you feel that that is research, please do put yes or no, if you don't, in the chats. Thank you. I'm getting some responses. Okay. Prince Patrick says yes. Anne says yes. Madam Ijama says yes. Mr. Raji Yakini says yes. Okay. Let's see. Can one person just raise your hand? I want you to unmute and tell me why you say it's research, since it seems we all agree that it's research. Can one person just unmute and tell us? Can I see your hand if you would like to unmute?
Okay,
Go ahead, please. Yes.
I would say it is a research because he made an effort to get a solution or to get his problem solved by searching through the web. So such effort is a research.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So he did make an effort to search for information, and he did sort of organize that information. He compared. Okay, let's have a look at the second one. Sarah decides to change her desktop computer since it has been working slowly recently. She decides to buy a laptop, which is light enough to be carried around, but with good RAM capacity and speed. A week later, she goes into a shop and buys a desktop computer on sale. All right, so is that research or not? Okay, I have some answers already. Thank you for being so proactive. Okay, Prince Patrick says no. Okay, my same people, Mr. Yakini, Miss Ijoma, Miss Khadija, Miss Anne, thank you. Okay, so Prince Patrick, I hope you don't mind. Can you unmute and tell us why you say no?
Well, look, good evening. Looking at what the scenario, she decides to buy a laptop, and you can see that she just went into, like, she just made a choice of just going to get something. She didn't try to investigate or analyze what is the reason for the first one getting spoiled and how will I get a better one or what I can. She didn't go into that analysis or investigative details which research encompasses. That's my own take on it.
Exactly. Thank you. You are correct. So we're all correct. She had an idea of possibly why, because she says, oh, maybe because it doesn't have a good RAM capacity, it needs to have speed, but she didn't bother to search for any information. And when she went into the shop, she actually just picked something randomly because it was on sale. She had gone with the idea of buying a laptop, but she ended up buying a desktop instead. So she didn't do any research. She didn't investigate, just like Prince Patrick said. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we're going to be going to the next one. A teacher decided to start using group work in class to allow her students to work collaboratively and talk to each other to solve the tasks. However, she notices that students are not working in groups properly. They do not finish the tasks assigned, and 1 or 2 students per group do all the work. Because of this, she decides to stop doing group work since she feels this approach is not effective in her class. So is that research or not? Did she do any research there? All right, thank you. Madam Ijoma says no. Prince Patrick says no. All right. So we're going to go to the next one and see if that is research. Mr. Babajide also says no. And you're all correct. We'll be looking at the reasons a bit later. The third scenario, a teacher usually uses videos in her classes. Lately, she has noticed that students are not really engaged and do not finish the tasks assigned. She asks her students and finds that students consider the language in the videos too advanced and they have difficulties understanding it. She asks a colleague to check the videos. This colleague confirms what the students have told her. As a result, she begins to choose the videos more carefully based on students' level, as well as providing them with the language they need to understand the videos. Okay, so is that research or not? Right, I'm getting a lot of yes, 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 yeah. Okay, someone says no. I'm getting yes, I'm getting no. All right. I'll wait a few seconds. Maybe I get a few more. Okay, yes, yes, yes. All right, thank you. So it is actually research based on the simple definition that we've given, but I'd like somebody to volunteer to compare the two teachers' scenarios and tell us why the first one is not research and why the second one is research. Do we have a volunteer, please? You can. Is someone talking? Okay. Prince Patrick has raised his hand. Okay, go ahead, Prince Patrick. I would have wanted someone else, but since you're the only one, the only hand I can see, please go ahead.
Well, I'll say that if you look at the first scenario, she noticed something, but she didn't question deeply as to why that thing was not working. She didn't try to find out, okay, these are what is making this thing not to work, and these are the reasons, or try to go in depth and analyze that, okay, I can do this or I can do that. But if you look at the second scenario, she noticed something and her students preferred that this was something that was happening. She decided to do more investigation, trying to find out, okay, from other people, why is this thing so? And using those ideas that she has got, she tried to see how she can carefully incorporate that. And incorporating it, she got to get a better result. That's my
Exactly. Thank you so much for that input. So the first teacher noticed something, but she didn't bother to investigate. She didn't tell us how long she had been noticing it for. Was it on just that one day? Was it always, she didn't bother to find out why. Was it a problem with the grouping? There could be so many reasons for what she noticed. And she might actually not have noticed correctly, because that's something we find sometimes when we investigate, that what we think we're seeing is not what is actually happening. But for the second teacher, she took time to investigate through asking her students and also involving her colleague. All right, so now we have a general idea of what research is and what it isn't. research doesn't have to be too academic. We do research in everyday life. If you want to buy a car, you're likely to research the best model for Nigerian roads or wherever you're from, you know, depending on what you need. If you want to go to a college, you want to have a scholarship, you probably research the different offers. So we research on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be too academic. And we saw an example of a teacher that did some research in her class, you know, without going to too much trouble. She investigated by asking the students, and she asked a colleague, and she was able to get a better result. Now, for us to be able to research, we need to have one important thing. For us to be able to carry out classroom action research specifically, we need to be used to reflective practice. I put in a definition of reflective practice here, and I know that during our Black Belts, we actually had a module that talked about us as reflective practitioners. And in almost every module, we were asked to write down reflective notes. And this should have trained us, you know, to a stage where we find it easy to analyze and evaluate our own actions and then to gain insight. So for every class, do you review, oh, how did this class go? Was my lesson plan okay? Was I able to follow the lesson plan? Was I able to achieve the objectives? What went well? What could have gone better? That is reflection. We have to make it a part and parcel of us. It's the beginning part of the ability to research. If you cannot reflect, you won't even notice that there's a problem or otherwise in your classroom that you want to research. And one beautiful thing about reflection is that you can research about successes and you can research about challenges. So if you do something in your class and it goes well, you should be able to reflect on, wow, that was a wonderful class. I've never had such an excellent class. Let me research into it and find out why it went so well so that I can keep replicating it. Was it just a fluke or was it actually something I did? I can replicate it at other times and I can also teach it to my colleagues. Then of course, when we're having problems, we can reflect on those challenges. You know, what made it challenging? What was the main problem? And here is one method that I like that we can use to reflect. And once we are able to get a success or get a challenge, we can build on that to create our research question or research topic, as the case may be. So I'll give an example of mine. And if you can, if you have a sheet of paper at hand, or if you want to type in the chats, reflect on a success of yours. So tell us what happened. Tell us what you saw. Tell us what you heard in the classroom. Tell us how you felt or what you felt. So I'll give my own personal example. A few weeks ago, I told a story in my classroom, and I do that a lot. It's not a new thing. But what was new for me was that I asked the learners, before I started telling the story, I asked the learners to draw out the setting. So I said to my learners, get a sheet of paper, draw a snake. And then I said, draw a tree. And I said, under the tree, draw the nest of the snake's eggs. And then I said, draw a hunter with a bow and arrow. Now, all of this I did because I wanted to get them to really picturize and visualize the setting, to get them to be invested and interested in the story I wanted to tell. So I went ahead and told the story of the hunter and the snake and everything. And at the end of the story, at the end of the class, I asked them, of course, the class was more than just storytelling, but I'm just cutting to the chase here. I asked them to give me their pictures. I said, oh, anyone that is interested in having the picture of their drawing taken should please give it to me. So most of them gave me the pictures, and I was so surprised that a lot of them drew on more than what I asked them to draw. So as I continued telling the story, and I said something like, oh, the hunter stole the eggs and took them to his hut. Some of the children drew the hunter's hut. I talked about the hunter had a wife and children. Some of the children drew the hunter's children. I didn't ask them to do that. And then what really excited me, because I teach English, some of them started to annotate those diagrams. They put dialogue. So some of them drew it like a comic. They were putting speech bubbles. Some just put like, someone wrote, I am a powerful hunter on the hunter's chest, you know, and this is producing language. I teach English. They don't like to write. but I didn't even ask them to write. It was a listening exercise, but I got them to write, and I was so excited that that went well. So if I was going to fill this, I would say I saw my learners using text to express themselves after listening to a story. I heard them being excited to draw and share their drawings. I felt very happy at this method I used, and I hope to use it again. Something as simple as that can be my reflection on that. And when I have that reflection, I can then go on further to decide if I want to research on it. If I want to reflect on challenge, I could say something like, my challenge is the fact that I have a lot of learners that struggle with spelling. So I could say I saw my learners miss a lot of the spelling words, even though they had an entire week to practice. I heard them grumbling that they didn't like spelling. I heard them grumbling that the words were confusing. I felt confused as to how I could help them. I felt unhappy that they found it challenging. I felt worried that at their ages, they hadn't grasped some of this spelling concepts, so that is just my reflection. And then I can go on to try to create a research topic around that. I can create a research topic as to why do my learners struggle with spelling, or the beauty of drawing in listening comprehension and writing, something like that. So we've had a look at what research is. We've had a look at that importance of being able to reflect. Now, what exactly is action research? So action research is not just about asking questions, and that is where it's so much different from the conventional research. Yeah, in a conventional research, you can have your findings and give recommendations, but in action research, you get your findings and you plan an action to actually improve your situation. You plan an action to improve your situation. So action research is a disciplined process of inquiry conducted by and for those taking the action. So the research is conducted by you, the teacher, unlike a research that somebody from the university comes and shares questionnaires in your classroom and asks you questions about your class, and maybe even later on comes to give you, oh, these are my results and these are my recommendations. You are the one, conducting the research. You're the one taking the actions. You're the one suggesting and monitoring. Primary reason for engaging in research or action research is to assist the actor, that is you, the teacher, in improving or refining his or her actions. So the major differences are in the purpose. Like I said, one is for action. The other one is just for theory and to build the body of knowledge. The other one is action research is also for problem identification. So it's very specific to your own classroom. In action research, you may not need to do any literature review, but maybe just a little bit of review, just to research, read up about some of the things that you feel may be happening. But in the other one, you need to, cite a lot of different people and things like that. Okay, someone says he can't hear. Can you hear me, please? Miss Fatima, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
okay. Thank you so much. So I will continue. If you can't hear, maybe you need to check your sound setting, or you just log out and log back in again. In action research, the students and members of the community and the teachers are the participants. But in conventional research, you don't need to be related or know the people. In action research, your research design can be flexible and it's context driven. So depending on what you find, you can decide to change your questions. You can decide to change the way you go about what you are doing. All right. But what the conventional research, you have to follow a particular structure and your research has to be validated and all of that. In action research, we also have analysis, but it's not a very in-depth analysis. I know personally, that's what I used to feel when I used to hear the word research, like all these regression charts. And yes, we learn them, but even for the maths people, it's not common math. So it can be technical. You need to sometimes even look for computer models to help you out with the analysis. But with action research, it's just simple statistics, frequency, percentages, and things like that. And of course, like we said, you apply your research in your class with action research. But with other research, well, it's generalized and it can be applied anywhere else. And sometimes it's never applied at all, but it's just gotten as, oh, this is one finding. It's a theory that may or may not be applicable. Okay, so just to summarize it, action research is situation-based. It's related to your classroom or your setting, your school. It can also be a school-wide research, but here we're focusing on being in the classroom. It's participatory. We talked about that. It's data-driven. You have to get data. So we're looking at that lady that just stopped her group work. She didn't bother to get any data, but the lady that asked the students and asked her colleague, she got data. It's practical and action-oriented. It's reflective. You have to keep on reflecting on what you're doing, and it's cyclical. So for the lady that decided to change the type of videos she gives, she still needs to keep on observing the class to see, okay, is it actually getting better, and how much better is it getting? All right. So now we also have something called exploratory action research. Exploratory action research. And exploratory action research is not too far off from action research. It just means that you spend more time exploring. So the lady explored, you know, so the scenario we looked at was sort of like exploratory action research, because she explored what she thought the problem was. She asked the students, she asked the learners, and then she took an action. But it doesn't say whether she observed that action and acted upon the second observation. So basically, with action research, you plan, you observe something, you reflect and you think about something, you plan an action, you do the action, and then you observe and you reflect. But with exploratory action research, which is the best one, you notice something, you plan an exploration. You want to find out exactly what is happening. So you don't just take an action, you find out what is happening. And you use different tools to find out what is happening. You get your findings, you reflect on those findings, and then you plan your action. And then you observe the action, you reflect on the outcome of the action, and if necessary, you plan again. So we talked about it being cyclical. So you just keep on observing to make sure that, oh, things are not changing too much. You're still getting the results that you want to get. All right, so here are steps of exploratory action research. I hope it doesn't look too technical, but basically there are two main steps. We have the exploration phase, and then we have the action phase. So like I said, you plan to explore, you analyze the results of your exploration, and then you create a plan for an action. That's the plan to change. Then you do the action in your class, you observe the results of the action, you reflect on it, and if necessary, you make another plan. If not, you're good to go. You're good to share it with others, because it has become now knowledge that is backed by data. So you can share by doing a presentation, by writing a report, by creating a poster to share with the rest of the world, or even creating a video. So these are some of the steps under each of the aspects. So when you're planning to explore, you have to identify what topic you want to explore on. Then you have to define your exploratory research questions. What are you going to ask? Who are you going to talk to? Are you talking to the students? Are you talking to their parents? Are you talking to your colleagues? Or are you just looking inwards? Or just observing and getting information from your observations? And your observations can be observations of your classroom. It can be observations of your lesson plan. It can be observation of your scheme of work or diary. Here you decide to analyze all of these things and get information from that. So when you've gotten, you know, your topic and you've been able to decide what you want to analyze, then you explore and you start to collect the data. If you're exploring the students, you're probably going to be using things like questionnaires or surveys or just interviews, oral interviews. You could also use focus groups with students. Your colleagues, it could be interviews, the same thing, basically. Same with your parents. It could be interviews, focus groups, questionnaires, surveys. For yourself, it's likely to be recordings of yourself, or it could be audio, video. It could also be your writing. You could reflect on your practice and then go through the reflections. Or it could be an observation journal where you just write down what happens every day and you try to notice a pattern, and then you analyze the data. So when you're done with that, from all the information you've gotten, you can then say, oh, my original questions, or my original thought or my hypothesis, let's say, was I actually correct? And if I was, or if I wasn't, what did I find out? And what can I do now to correct what the problem is, if it's a challenge? And if it's a success, okay, how did I make it work last time? I need to replicate it and make it work again. And then you take an action, you observe the action, right? You evaluate the action and you reflect on it. You analyze the outcome of the action. And that is the end of one cycle of the exploratory action research. So I hope I'm not losing anybody. I hope I'm not getting too technical. We're going to do a brief classwork now. So let's see if we're getting it. Now, once you've gotten your topic, something that you want to research on, and you get that by exploring your classroom, clarifying your problem, your interest, or something that puzzles you, and then you decide on that topic. The very first important thing is getting your topic. So here we have a look at 3 scenarios, and I want you to tell me if the teacher explored or if the teacher just took an action. So first one, a teacher notices that her students insist on using their mobile phones in class. In order to address the situation, she plans activities where students can use their mobile phones for language learning purposes. So please put in the chats if you think it's A or B. 1A, meaning that the teacher explored the situation first. 1B, meaning that the teacher immediately acted on the situation. I'll be waiting for your responses. Okay, thank you. Madam Ijoma says A, that they explored. Prince Patrick says A. Okay. Ifama also says A. A, Mr. Yusuf. Abigail says A. A, B. Okay, I have 1B. Anybody else? Anyone supporting the Bs, or is everybody with the A's? Okay. Now, for that particular question, number 1, the answer is actually B. The teacher did not explore. She noticed, yes, but she didn't bother to ask why, or to find out why, or to keep track of how often this happens. So it's actually the teacher taking action on assumption that, oh, since they like using the phone, I'm going to go with the phones and make it a learning for them. It's not necessarily a bad action, but she didn't really bother to explore. Because if it's not just that they like the phone, if it's that they're passing messages on social media, they still will not do the class activities. They won't learn. She'll think she's giving them tasks on the phone, but they'll still be chatting with their friends, surfing on social media. Okay, so number 2, a group of colleagues are having some difficulties managing a group of students. They are students and they claim that they didn't enjoy working so passively at their desk. So is it A, did the teachers explore the situation first, or is it B, did the teachers immediately act on the situation? Please put your answers in the chats. Thank you. B, thank you, Mr. Ido Jamil. Miss Halima, who else? Okay, I'm not sure if that was for the last question of this one. All right. Okay, Prince Patrick says A. Zainab Suleiman says A. Jean-Marie says A. Yes, yes, thank you, Babaji Day. Miss Ijoma. Yes, the answer is A. The teachers decided to explore by asking the students. Okay, the last one for this page. A teacher wants to teach her students a song. She wonders what song they might like, so she gives a survey to her students to know. Based on this, she decides to teach students a current pop song. So did that teacher explore the situation first, or did she act immediately on the situation? All right, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're all correct. The teacher explored the situation by giving a survey. So this is just to help us to participate and to help us to see the difference. Yes, we notice a lot of things as teachers, and sometimes we just act thinking that, oh, because this is happening, this is going to be the best answer. But it's important that we actually take a step back, make some inquiries to find out that if what we're noticing is actually what is happening. We could be noticing things, but the reason why those things are happening may be so unrelated to what we think. So if we take an action without exploring, the action may not actually be very useful. Okay, so when you've gotten your research topic, you need to think of the questions that you'll be asking. And I talked about the fact that you can ask your colleagues, you can ask students, parents, community members, or you can look into yourself. Try to limit the question to questions that are really meaningful and that can be answered while you're still working. Because we're working, we can't take 3 days off to conduct a research. It has to be something we can do. And I've done it and it didn't take too much out of my time. Always try to go for higher order questions and not yes or no questions, and try to avoid jargon or technical terms that the students you're talking to will not understand, or the community members you are relating will not understand. Be specific, be concise. Make sure you are not doing the research just for the sake of doing it, because there are some things that we know either from general research or we know as truths that you can decide, oh, I'm going to just ask it because I want to do a research. That's just a waste of your time. Then try to be specific, make it related to your study, to your topic, because sometimes we just want to fill our questionnaires and then we ask topics that are not, we ask questions that are not related to the information we want to find out. So somebody that wants to find out about the genre of music, asking a question like, do you have a radio in your house? Yes, radio is used for music, but that's not really a part of what you want to ask. It's not relevant to what you want to ask. You'd be asking questions around what type of music do you prefer? You can even ask a question around how often do you listen to music, or do you like music, you know, things like that. But you wouldn't be asking, do you have a radio in your house? Okay, make it strategic and make it improvement oriented. Don't ask a question that doesn't help the situation, that can't help the situation. Okay, so here's just an example of some of the type of questions that you can use to explore your own ideas, your perception, to explore the perceptions of others, which would include your colleagues, your parents, community members, and the students, and questions that could also look into the behavior, like classroom behavior, day-to-day occurrences in the class. So here we have an example that the teacher has a research topic, or the topic that is of concern or interest to her is that her students speak in English only to her, but not to each other. So I know that we have a lot of that in our classrooms. When they're speaking to the teachers, they will speak English, but once they want to speak to their friends, they turn to the local languages. And this is an issue, especially if it's happening inside the classroom. If it's happening outside the classroom, it may not be an issue. So now she needs to think about, okay, in what parts of the class do I think students speak to me? Why do I think it's important for them to speak to each other or to one another in English? So you need to look at, okay, this question and I'm asking, is it really relevant? So, I mean, isn't it okay if they speak to me? Why do they need to speak to each other? Then also, they speak to me. Okay, can we please mute our microphones? I'm getting an echo. Thank you. Exploring others' perceptions. What do my students think about this? So you can ask your students, you know, why do you speak? And when you are looking at this, it's not just one question you're going to ask the students. You ask at least 4 or 5 questions related to what they think about speaking the language. So for example, are you comfortable speaking English to your friends? Do you speak English or whatever language more often to your friends? Why do you do that? What would help you to speak English? You know, different questions around that. And then also you could talk to your colleagues to find out, is it only in your class that this happens, or is it happening with all the teachers in the school? You could also explore the behavior. Which of the students don't speak English? Which of the students speak English? When do they start speaking English? Do they first of all start off with their local language or their native language and then go to English? Or do they start off with English and then go to the local language? Are they aware that they're making that switch? Is it conscious or subconscious? So those are some of the questions that you will ask. And if you're exploring behavior, that is observing. You are observing them in the classroom and you're taking down notes to answer the questions that you're asking about their behavior. Or you can also get a colleague to come into your classroom. So you're teaching as you normally would, but the colleague is observing your behavior and observing the learner's behaviors and writing down their findings for you to analyze at a later date. Okay, so your research questions, we talked about some of the criteria. It should be SMART, it should be related to the study. So here are some questions also related to learning English. I'd like us to just have a look at whether they meet the criteria. So the first one, what affects my students learning English? Now, this is not a very smart question because it's such a broad question and it's not easy to measure what affects. You know, there could be a million things affecting them. It could be socioeconomic. It could be the time of day they are in class. So you need to make your questions a bit more specific. So when do my students use English to communicate with each other? That is more specific. Oh, they use it when I'm in class. They use it during pair work, or they never use it. You know, why don't my students learn? I would have asked you this, but I'm running out of time. Why don't my students learn is also a very vague and non-specific question. It's not measurable. It's not realistic. Is it even true? For me, I don't even believe it's true, because it's not possible to have a class where no student is learning. Now, you could talk about the pace at which they learn, the times at which they learn best. Those are more specific. How many times do my students use their dictionaries when doing their homework? Now, that's a specific question that the students themselves can keep track of. How can films promote my students' motivation? Now, that question, it depends. It could possibly be better refined, but on its own, it's something that could help, but it's really also not specific. And then how often in my lesson do my students work in pairs? That is specific, that is measurable. All right, I hope we understand. So it's just to give us an idea of the different types of questions that we will ask while we are exploring the problem or the topic that we have identified. I did mention earlier, it doesn't always have to be a problem. It could also be you exploring a success in your classroom or an interest, something you're just passionate about and you want to know more about within the classroom. Okay. So we've talked about the questions. How do you collect the information? So I did mention about the written reflections already. You're writing what you think. And you can also take down notes from informal conversation with your colleagues. So you discuss with a colleague and you go back to write it down, or even write it down while the person is talking. You could record a focus group. A focus group is a small group of people in a similar field discussing the same topic. So this is more formal than the informal conversation. You're actually taking notes, they're prepared, and you sit down and discuss it. Then you could give a questionnaire. You could record video or audio recordings of your lessons for you to go back to reflect on. You could take pictures of your classes. They're all in pieces of information. There are ways you can collect the data. You can look at what other people have written. You can ask them to write their own reflections. You can also look at reflective writing by the students. You can record interviews or chats. So I did talk about individual interviews. You can assess, review your lesson plans and the materials, study them in depth, look for patterns, look for the ones that work. You could also talk to or look for a critical friend. Now, a critical friend is a friend that, even though that is not the person with the main problem, you bring that person in to support you as you do your research. And that person is able to look deeper. So you can be in your class and observe and reflect, but you are sort of already biased because it's your classroom. So you need to bring in a friend that is willing to tell you the truth as they see it. That's a critical friend. Then, of course, you could also look into students' performances on tasks. That is a bit related to the normal quantitative data that we're used to. Okay, how many people scored above 70? Did the scores improve? What is the average score? What is the highest score, the lowest score? Things like that. All of that are some of the data that we can collect and the tools that we can use to collect them. All right. So after you've collected your data, this is all still from the exploration stage. You need to analyze that data. And you can organize the data into different related phases. Then you can try to reduce the data. Those that are really related, you bring them together and try to understand. And then you can find a way to display your data. Display can be, we talked about percentages before. You can use bar charts, you can use line graphs, you can use pie charts, just to get a visual understanding of the information that you've gotten from all the different sources, questionnaire, interview, lesson plan analysis, whatever it is. And then you come to a conclusion or your findings from your exploration. Did you find that truly the learners believe and you've been convinced from the data that using a phone to teach them in the classroom will actually improve their learning goals? Or have you found things that, okay, did you discover that truly they don't like to talk to each other? They only like to talk to you in English, using that example that we found. If that is the conclusion, that is good. Whatever the conclusion, it's a good one. The next thing after that conclusion or the findings is, okay, what action am I going to do to remedy it? Like I said, if it's a challenge, and if it's a success, how can I replicate it? So basically here it says, so what? What do the findings tell me about my research questions? How do these findings relate to my findings from other sources? You need to be able to relate everything together, and that is done in the organization and reduction stage. Okay, so we said that once you've gotten your findings, then you go for planning a change. How do you get ideas on what to do to change? Because sometimes you don't even know what to do. Like, this is how I've been doing it. This is how I was taught. This finding is showing that I need to make a change, but I don't know what to do. Ask your students for suggestions. What can I do to make you talk more to each other in class? Think from inside yourself means you're thinking. Talk to other teachers. Look into training materials, conference materials, talk to people on your association groups. And luckily, we have so many groups. I see some groups on Facebook and they just bring up random problems. Oh, this and this is happening in my class. What can I do? You know, if a learner did this, what can I do? So that's just an example. Oh, I found this. What do you think I can do? And then, of course, you can also look into academic research. Some researchers have done their research and they've brought out theories and it has worked for them. You can see if something similar, either exactly as it was done or an adapted version for your context can work for you. You can also look into what other teachers have researched. And that's part of the beauty of when you do your classroom action research, you try to share it in one way or the other so that people can benefit from it and possibly use your own actions in their classroom. Now, you will come up with a lot of ideas in some cases. You need to prioritize, okay, which one comes first? Can I do all 5 actions that I've come up with that will help these children talk to each other? Rather than doing all 5, maybe I should start with 1 or 2. So prioritizing and decision-making come in. You need to also find a way to manage the change because human beings don't like change. And those human beings include your students, their parents, and even your school management. So you have to find a way to keep them updated. Oh, I did this little research, or I want to do this research, or I did this research. These are my findings. I want to try this. Let your line manager buy into what you want to do. Find a way to just manage that change. Find a way to make sure the change is not too abrupt for your learners so that they can accept it. Because a lot of us are used to a particular style of learning or teaching. Many learners are used to that the teacher tells us everything. So when you start telling them to brainstorm, to do pair work, to be the ones to share their ideas, it's new to them. They doubt themselves, they second guess themselves, they're shy, and they may rebel in a passive way. So you need to also convince them. And what is good to do is while you're exploring, you're already sharing with them that, oh, I noticed this. Sometimes you tell them exactly what you notice, sometimes you don't, but I need your help with something. Please answer these questions for me. I want to see if I can improve our classes, make it better. They see that you're doing it for them. You're not doing it just to make their work more difficult or to make their life more difficult. So they're likely to accept that change in an easier manner. Sometimes it's the parents you need to convince. So a lot of times we have parents that are not happy that you are giving projects. They want writing, and we're moving to, activity-based learning, and like, what is this? My child has not written any notes. And they said they did project. What is project? Some parents tell me that this project you're giving these children is the parents you are giving work to do. And that is because we've not been able to really manage that change very well. And then, of course, we have to think of the resources we have. There might be a change that was recommended in a book from the US, but you don't have the resources to provide all the things they say you should provide in your own classroom. Can you adapt that change to your own setting, or do you need to just jettison it and look for something else that you can use and is readily available to you? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the research that I did. I was very fortunate. I applied to a British Council program where they offered to teach us on exploratory action research, and I was chosen. And one problem that I seem to have been facing over the years in which I taught was that I noticed that the girls in my classroom were better at reading. They were reading with more expression, they were more confident to read, and I believe that they were more fluent. So I had 4 major questions based on this topic. Okay, what are my own expectations? Was I the one that was having expectations that were too high? Secondly, what do they, both boys and girls, how do they feel about reading? Thirdly, how often do they read? Because that could be the issue. Maybe it was a matter of girls are reading more, that's why. And then what are my colleagues noticing? Are they noticing the same things? So those were the major questions. Now, under each question, I had more questions. So I decided to share a questionnaire with my learners, and question 1 and 2 were in that questionnaire. So I was asking, sorry, not question 1 and 2, question 2 and 3 were in the questionnaire I shared with my learners. So I asked them various questions about how comfortable do you feel reading aloud? How many times do you read? What's your favorite type of book to read? What can I do to make your reading better? I asked 10 questions to the learners, and all of those 10 questions fall under number 2 and 3. Then I had a focus group with my colleagues, the English teachers in the school where I worked, to find out, okay, did they notice the same in their own classrooms? And we realized that in most of the classes, yes, the girls were more fluent, but we had one class where the boys actually were more excited to read and read better. And then the first one was from my own, okay, I had to sit down and think and reflect, and okay, what exactly is the average reading age for this class? Am I expecting too much from them? So after all of this data collection, I found that actually the boys were not worse at reading than the girls. They were just more shy to read out loud because they didn't want to be made fun of. I also, found out that the girls read with more expression and they liked reading more, and they read more frequently than the boys. But in itself, they were not higher skill. They were not more fluent. In fluency, you look at accuracy and you look at speed. They were actually not more fluent than the boys. So after I discovered this, I decided, okay, I needed to take some actions that would get the boys to read as eagerly as the girls were reading. So the first thing I did, was to try to get them to understand some explicit reading strategies. And I felt that once I'm able to teach them this, they will appreciate what they're reading better, and they'll get a better love for reading. I also decided to create like ground rules about nobody should make fun of the other person when they're reading and things like that. I also paired male and female learners because I realized in my school, boys normally work separate and sit separate, girls sit separate. I decided that, okay, when we're doing pair work, we're going to have them work together so that they're already breaking that barrier of I'm shy or I'm going to be made fun of. And then I also decided to give them books to read so that they're kind of reading almost at the same frequency level. So every week I would give them books to read, and I would give them questions to ask themselves and to answer at the end of the day. So while I did this, I was observing their behaviors in classroom. And then at the end of that, I had the children, the students themselves come together and had a focus group. I asked them interview questions like, okay, how did you feel being paired with a boy? How has your reading improved? Did you like me giving you books? You know, things around that generally. And then I came out with some conclusions, which I think are good. So I found out that using the reading strategies helps them, and the mixed gender groupings also helps to break down that sense of being shy. I also found out that teaching them how to use guiding questions helped to improve their comprehension. And one thing I found out, because when we were doing the focus groups, some of the boys complained that the girls were very bossy, that they didn't allow them to do a lot of the work. They wanted to do it on their own. And some of the girls complained that the boys were playful. So for me, I noticed that that means that during their pair work, I need to try to make sure that both the boys and the girls had sort of an equal opportunity to participate. So the research basically showed me some good things and showed me some things that I needed to improve upon in myself. But overall, I was able to increase the fluency of both the male and female learners in my classroom. Yeah, so we are coming to the end. You've seen my journey. You've seen what it takes to participate in exploratory action research. For my learners, it increased their interest and their engagement. They were asking me questions. Somebody said, when I asked what I can do to help them, one of them said I should introduce them to historical books. And I noticed that the books I give them are normally fiction or just plain nonfiction. We had 2 students that were interested in history. So they were interested in their own learning. Some said they wanted comics. They were more engaged because I involved them. They had a sense of ownership, and they felt that they had power to sort of control me, or okay, not control, influence me. And that made them happy. Then there was a sense of community because we were doing the focus group as a group. We were having pair work. We were doing more group work. There was more communication, and it gave them time to also reflect on their own learning style and to be able to develop metacognition. So I was asking them things around, do you think you're a good reader? What do you think I can do to make you better? What can you also do to improve your reading? You know, things like that. So it really helped them. And it improved the rapport in my classroom very, very much. Like, I was so happy with the way it helped us to bond, and it helped them to really appreciate their own learning. For teaching, it gave me a deeper knowledge of my class, and anybody that does it is definitely going to get insights into their own classroom. And it helps you to become an agent of change. You are confident to try new things in your classroom because these things are backed by information, by data. It's not just, I feel like, or I heard they're doing like this in London, let me do it, you know. And then it developed a lot of my skills, critical thinking, analysis. I didn't have time to go further into the analysis, but there was a whole process, but it wasn't so difficult. Like I said, it was just percentages, me gathering the data and finding out, okay, 80% of the boys are shy, 70% of the girls are shy, you know, things like that. I also improved my own negotiation skills. I had to negotiate with the learners. I negotiated with my colleagues and my problem solving skills. And definitely it helped me to grow professionally. And it has taken me actually further than I thought, because I had the opportunity, you know, to write a report that was published in a British Council journal. This is my 3rd presentation after I carried out that action research. I've been more empowered, and I've been able to sort of hopefully empower others. All right, so we are coming to the end. We are going to start an exploratory action research group in 1 Million Teachers, but we're going to start it really small. I'm going to be mentoring 3 people that I want to that are interested in researching their classroom for a start. Hopefully by the time we're able to have those 3 be mentored by me, we can grow it and they can also mentor other people. But in order to choose the 3 people, I'm going to give us some time. It will be by, I want to say first come, first serve, but not only that. So I'm going to be sharing a link to a form. If you are interested, please fill out the form and I will be shortlisting 3 people that I will start with, hopefully. And I'll give you like a timeline that we're going to be using. So please just give me a minute. Let me find that link. But in the meantime, I think I can take questions.
Wow, Rasheedah, thank you so much. That was a very insightful and informative session about research. I'm sure a lot of people have learned so much from you today. We didn't know what you were going to talk about when you mentioned research. And like you said, a lot of people think it's maybe like a PhD thesis or something like that, but it's something practical that anyone can do. Anyone that is involved with children on a day-to-day basis. And at the end of the day, it was a win-win for the pupils, for the teacher, for your colleagues. And like you said, it has empowered you, it has informed you. And we're really looking forward to other 1 million teachers taking part in research. So please follow the link that she's going to share with you to fill in the form. And once you've engaged with those 3 teachers, I am sure that a lot more people will want to join you to find solutions to their problems. Like you said, it's about critical thinking, it's about problem solving, it empowers the teachers. So this is really, really interesting and something that all teachers should be involved in. So thank you so much. This is a really, really insightful and informative session, like you said. So I hope after you've mentored those 3 teachers, we will have a lot more teachers that will be carrying out research to inform and improve their teaching and learning. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So I have put the link in the chat. I also put in a book written by the British Council, not myself, but it's the core of what I got a lot of the materials for the presentation from. So if anybody's interested, you can download that book. Yeah. I hope you can see it as a PDF. I can try to also look for the link to the original British Council website where I downloaded it from. I don't know, it's already 7:30. I don't know if we have time for questions or if we have questions. I noticed somebody asking.
Put her hand
yes.
up and put the question in the chat. So if we can just do that quickly before we call it a day.
Yes, so she asked a question about projects in the early years classroom. And personally, I think it's something that can be done. But you know, the beautiful thing about this topic is that you can actually decide to do your own action research related to that. Now, it depends on the level of complexity that you want. So something as simple as giving them plants, you know, we do living things. So giving them a flower pots to plant their bean seeds or their corn seeds, you know, those grow very quickly and they're able to take care of the plants. They're able to measure how it's growing. That is a project that a child that is 5 years old, even 4, could do. Now, a 4-year-old would probably need help with writing down the results, but they can do it. And when they finish, they can draw up, you know, their findings that, oh, for over a period of a week, I watered this plant twice a day, and every day it grew by so centimeters. And I saw that, you know, water and whatever to grow. You can even do, okay, one group is going to have their own plants in the sun, another group is going to have theirs in the classroom by the window, and the third group is going to have theirs in the cupboard. Let's see whose grows the fastest. And even they at that level can be asked, why do you think the one in the cupboard didn't grow or didn't grow very well? So that's a project. So at that level, you can find projects that are at their level. They may need to be supported, but definitely they can do the projects. Yes. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely they can. I've worked in a nursery class of 3-year-olds where they read the book about the 3 little pigs, and then they asked them to bring things from home and try to build a house, and which house is going to be the strongest. And they were using things like cardboard, they were using different materials. So it's a bit of science, and it's it's doing things that children can relate to. And I don't think any child is too young or too old to be involved in a project. So yes, I've definitely seen nursery children making houses using different materials, and they were just trying things out, just trying to see which house is going to be the strongest, using different materials that were provided for them. So they brought cartons and empty boxes from their houses, and they were trying things out. So just try to do something that the child can relate to. Thank you so much, Rasheedah. We've really, really learned a lot from you today. Thank you for your time. So let's hope that the next time you join us, you'll be talking about your group, and your group will be telling us what they've researched on and what they found out. So we're looking forward to another session where the 3 mentees will be talking about their findings. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right, then. That's all for today. So next week, we have Prince Patrick. He's going to be talking about AI. So I will send you some more information about that session. But we're having another session next Thursday. So we look forward to seeing you. Thank you for all that joined. Thank you again, Rasheedah. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Rasheedah. Thank you, Malima Fatima. Bye.
Thank you very much, doctor. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Doc. We
Thanks.
really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It
Thank
was
you so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. I'm also seeing the chats. Thank you so much. I appreciate your presence and your participation. Bye-bye.
Emmy, Emeka.